Pete Buttigieg thought he had the perfect setup. Standing at the podium during a high-profile congressional hearing on transportation infrastructure, the usually polished transportation secretary spotted an opportunity to make a clever quip. Representative Jasmine Crockett had just finished a passionate speech about funding disparities in her Texas district, and Buttigieg couldn't resist. "Well, Representative Crockett," he said with that signature smile, "maybe if your district focused more on actual transportation needs instead of creative interpretations of infrastructure, we'd have more to work with." The room went silent. Cameras captured every second. What Buttigieg intended as a light-hearted jab at progressive spending priorities was about to become his biggest public relations nightmare in years. Within minutes, the clip would be everywhere, and Jasmine Crockett was about to show millions of Americans exactly why you should never underestimate a congresswoman from Texas. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss how this political showdown unfolds. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Pete Buttigieg, former presidential candidate, Harvard graduate, and transportation secretary, known for his measured responses and intellectual approach. At 42, he'd built his reputation on being unflappable under pressure. His communication skills had made him a Democratic Party favorite, someone who could handle tough questions with ease. But today, that confidence might have been his downfall. Buttigieg had been testifying before the House Transportation Committee about the administration's infrastructure spending. He'd fielded dozens of questions from Republicans challenging every dollar spent. He was in his element, or so he thought. The hearing room was packed with reporters, C-SPAN cameras rolling, and millions watching live online. Jasmine Crockett, the 43-year-old freshman representative from Texas, had only been in Congress for 2 years, but she'd already made a name for herself as someone who didn't back down from fights. A former civil rights attorney with a law degree from the University of Houston, she'd spent years fighting for underserved communities in court before bringing that same energy to Capitol Hill. Crockett represented Texas's 30th district, which included parts of Dallas and its suburbs. Her constituents were predominantly Black and Hispanic families who'd been fighting for basic infrastructure improvements for decades. Crumbling roads, inadequate public transit, and failing bridges weren't just talking points for her. They were daily realities for the people who elected her. The hearing had been relatively routine until Crockett took her 5 minutes to question Buttigieg. She'd come prepared with charts, photographs, and statistics showing how her district had been consistently underfunded compared to wealthier areas. Her voice rose with genuine frustration as she described families who couldn't get to work because bus routes had been cut, seniors who couldn't access medical care because the nearest hospital was miles away with no reliable transportation. "Secretary Buttigieg," she'd said, holding up a photo of a pothole so large it looked like a small crater. "This is what infrastructure looks like in my district. We've been asking for help for years, and we keep getting told there's no money. But somehow, there's always money for projects in districts where people already have working roads." Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd grown up in communities like the ones she now represented. This wasn't political theater for Crockett. It was personal. What neither politician realized in that moment was how much this exchange would reveal about American politics in 2024. Buttigieg represented the polished, intellectual wing of the Democratic Party, the kind of politician comfortable in faculty lounges and think tank conferences. Crockett embodied the grassroots energy that had been reshaping the party from the bottom up. The cameras were rolling, social media was watching, and millions of Americans were about to witness what happens when privilege meets principle head-on. Buttigieg had been sailing through the hearing with the confidence of someone who'd mastered the art of congressional testimony. Republican committee members had thrown their usual talking points at him: government waste, bureaucratic inefficiency, liberal spending priorities. Each attack was met with his signature combination of policy expertise and media-trained deflection. He cited transportation studies, rattled off infrastructure statistics, and made his critics look unprepared with detailed responses that sounded authoritative, even when they didn't fully address the questions asked. The hearing room had settled into the familiar rhythm of political theater. Republicans would attack, Buttigieg would defend with technocratic precision, and Democrats would offer friendly questions that allowed him to highlight administration achievements. It was exactly the kind of environment where his Harvard-trained intellect and cabinet-level briefings gave him every advantage. When Crockett's turn came, Buttigieg initially treated her like just another freshman member looking to score political points for the folks back home. His staff had briefed him on the day's participants, but their research on Crockett had focused on surface-level details: her freshman status, her civil rights background, her district's demographics. What they hadn't conveyed was her reputation as a methodical preparation machine who treated every public appearance like a court case she intended to win. The transportation secretary had dealt with dozens of representatives trying to get attention for their districts over the past 2 years. Most followed predictable patterns: a few pointed questions, a request for specific